keyboard to the boardroom. This is the Business of Esports podcast.
The fastest growing entertainment phenomenon of this generation.
I, Prophet of Esports, joined today by my friend and co-host William Collis.
Yeah, we got the Book of Esports out. It's a big deal.
So everyone knows me as the Prophet and William as the Professor.
From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports after show live stream. I am Paul Dawalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts, Lindsay Poss, Jeff Cohen, Victoria Taylor. For those of you who are new to the after show live stream, what we do here is we cover all the stuff that didn't make it into the podcast. All the news, the topics, all the interesting things that we just didn't have time to cover in the 1 hour show. And the best part is, by doing it on the after show, we get to do it live with you guys, our fans, our viewers, you who get to be involved, challenge us, ask questions, bring up things maybe we didn't think about, get in our faces. It's all interactive. It's all live. That's the best part. Thank you guys. If you're a regular here, thank you for coming every week. Thank you for maybe telling your friends or colleagues about the after show. We really appreciate it. As always, though, we've got an incredible amount of topics this week that we could cover. There are some big news stories that we covered on the podcast. First of all, how is everyone doing tonight?
I'm good.
Just living the dream.
Always best day of the week. Where's William? This is like a recurring theme.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are you guys surprised at this point? I mean,
No.
Okay. So
Remember when you thought that the intro was going to make him less late?
Well, you went to the shorter intro, I think. That's the problem.
That's the problem. He thought he had more time.
His model yet.
I like that when you keep him waiting for a bit in the waiting room.
Which he is not, just to
He's
be clear.
not. He's not. Okay.
But no, I'm sure William's coming anytime now. I know because we did the podcast together like just an hour ago or an hour and a half ago. So I know for a fact he's coming. Christian says, really good. Let's rock and roll, Christian. I agree. Neil, best day of the week. Where's the professor? Neil, you know he's late by now. The professor is coming. He will be here. But I'm sure he's like putting.
I can be the new professor. I can take the professor position just until he gets here.
That's bold. That's big shoes.
I know. Assistant prof.
Neil says he might be too busy signing copies of his book. This is true. The book sold incredibly well. And actually, I'm going to remind people, because I know almost everyone watching right now bought the Book of Esports. Make sure you guys, if you bought it, go leave a review on Amazon. You know, so many of the people who come to the live stream are, oh, there he is. Well, look at that.
I only appear when somebody reviews the book. So, like, I guess I was waiting. I was like, oh, I'm like, isn't it like Tinkerbell that has the clapping? Like, I'll only be here if there's a review to power me.
There you go. We said his name 3 times, and we said the Book of Esports 3 times, so William appeared. Christian says, after 15 minutes of no professor show, can we skip class?
Nice.
Christian, no, because you've got like 4 substitute teachers here. So I mean, if the substitute shows up, there's no skipping class. Unfortunately,
It's also usually way more fun. Just saying.
I'm just excited that Lindsay has the fancy background this week.
I know. I'm gonna listen. The attic. It's getting redone. It's gonna be nice. You'll see.
It's gonna be awesome. I bet. Yeah.
There you go.
I'm working on it.
Yeah. Guys, let me just first tease the podcast before we jump into anything. We had a great guest this week, the CEO of Play One Up, a company called Play One Up, which does really interesting things around on-demand. They're like an on-demand tournament platform, which is neat. It's an app, and the CEO has a very interesting background and story. I highly recommend checking it out. We also on the podcast talk about the rumors around Microsoft reportedly buying Discord for $10 billion. So that was one of the topics we covered. And the other topic we covered was GameStop, who had their earnings report the other night, basically saying that officially, at least, because this is their first official announcement really since all of the Reddit craziness, that they are going to be expanding into PC gaming, monitor, and gaming TV sales. So they're going to expand beyond games, used games, and consoles, which is they're primarily what all they sell today.
That should justify the market cap.
Well, I mean, Jeff, we could jump into it because look, you used to be a Wall Street
Yeah, I
analyst.
want your thoughts. Why are you hesitating at all? Tell us how you really feel.
Hold on. I want to
insane.
bring this up. Let me put it on the screen here. Hang on, because one of Jeff's, I would call colleague, right? Because you were an analyst on Wall Street, covering gaming and entertainment. Is that not a fair statement?
Colleague might be the wrong word, I guess.
Okay.
You know,
well, I don't know how you would call
editors
someone
or peers.
Yeah,
I don't know. Whatever. Peer is
That's
probably the right word.
Yeah.
Colleague usually would be someone you work at the same company.
True. So a peer or a competitor here. This was from businessinsider.com, and the headline here was GameStop's new $175 target price from Jefferies has Reddit traders celebrating. So Jefferies, the analyst at Jefferies, has put a $175 price target on GameStop. Just to give you some context, the stock is currently at $120, which is up significantly from about the $10 or $20 it was trading at before all the Reddit craziness. How do we feel about this new price target from Jefferies, given what they announced on their earnings call also?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one. There's so many layers to get into about when you're a sell side analyst. You're kind of, your incentives are a little bit different than maybe you would think of from the outside world. Like, you're trying to both do a good job analyzing the company, help your buy side clients understand, the company and their business models and sort of news and what's going on. You're also sort of, trying to have a good relationship with the company. To some extent, you're working with the bank to help raise capital for that company. GameStop has clearly had a big price increase or share price increase. I imagine they will be looking to raise capital if they're not stupid. So, there are some incentives that maybe we need to unpack there. But also just looking at her rate, is it a her or him? I forget the name.
Her.
So looking at her rating, she's equal weight. So typically on Wall Street, there's either buy, sell, hold, or overweight, underweight, equal weight. And hold or equal weight is kind of typically meant as like sort of you're on the sidelines, like you have no view, no conviction one way or the other. So if she had kept her price target where it was and not sort of bumped it up, it would be kind of hard to justify having an equal weight or a hold. If you have a $4, $5 price target or whatever it was, 15, I think you said it was, and the stock's at 150, you should clearly have a sell rating just mathematically. So to some extent, she sort of had to bump her price target. I don't think she's enthusiastically saying buy the stock because she raised her price target. But yeah, that's just a little bit inside baseball around, sell side analysts and stuff like that. I mean, my view on the stock is probably kind of hasn't changed. I mean, it's sort of ridiculous. It's a fun story. I don't know if you guys saw the documentary that somehow already came out on Hulu. That's actually quite good. I don't know how they got a documentary out when the situation's sort of still ongoing. But the one thing that happened on the call or in the past couple of days that I think was notable, I didn't think it was the shift to PC sales and all that you mentioned. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought it was the executive hires they made. So a big part of the story in the bull case, to the extent there is one on GameStop, is that they brought in Ryan Cohen from Chewy, who has this background in e-commerce and online sales. And one of the things he did this in the last week was they brought on board a number of pretty impressive executives with background in like supply chain management, e-commerce, online sales, stuff like that. And I think those, if you're looking for some reason to kind of be bullish, I think that's probably what you want to look at, because that pivot to e-commerce is kind of the only thing that's potentially going to save them.
So no one has any issue with a price target going from 15 to 175 when the company lost almost $140 million in 2020, which was down from a profit of 19 million they made the year before. So, and sales declined 21%. No one thinks that maybe this analyst is somewhat disconnected from reality. William, you're muted if you're talking.
Oh, okay. I was saying something clever, but now the moment has passed. So just pretend I said something really clever and be like, "Oh, clever."
No, we want to know what were you saying?
No, it's not. The moment
Okay.
totally passed. The moment totally
Okay.
passed. It's one of those things that's only funny if it's spur of the moment.
I mean,
Much like everything I say.
First of all,
and you're
Adam's-
muted for half those moments.
How am I
says-
supposed to hold my mic? Now I'm like self-conscious. I've been self-conscious since that about 8:36. It's been 5 minutes. So
I
that
saw
whole time
you
I was-
read that and stare at the mic and look at the comment and stare at the mic.
I don't know. It's like, what's the movie where he's like, I don't know what to do with my hands. How am I supposed to hold the mic? Should I like hold it up? Like,
That's actually, that is exactly what you do. But
Adam, please help me.
Yeah.
Adam says, don't even need to see an earnings call to know it's way too high for what they offer right now. Yeah. You know, my read on the whole thing is the turnaround is already priced in, right? Like the stock is trading at a level as if they've already pivoted to e-commerce. It's a huge success. The turnaround has happened and we're all on our way, right? Like, which, you know, I think there should be some doubt whether they can turn this thing around. Ryan Cohen obviously has a great track record with Chewy. They maybe bring in some good executives, but I would argue this is a tough uphill climb, regardless of the people and everything else. I don't know if
I was just gonna say the only thing that's actually changed is the people they've hired that they've brought in. There actually hasn't been a change yet. There's just been discussion about, well, we might do this, but still, I think everybody's forgetting the huge drastic jump of wherever it was, $15, whatever.
Agreed. And on the, because we do talk about this on the podcast, I think we really unpack it even further in terms of how could GameStop really make this transformation happen, and what are the options for them in terms of you know, making a comeback. Robert says, what separates them from Best Buy now? No appliances. It's funny, but it's true. And I'll tease a little bit on the podcast. You know, William and I break it down sort of into 3 bits, which is like price, availability of whatever item you're looking for, and service. And so can GameStop beat Best Buy, Amazon, Micro Center, Newegg, wherever else, like all the other e-commerce players in gaming hardware? Can they beat them on any of those 3 points is the question. I would love you guys, the viewers, to get your thoughts on that. Pingle says, first time listener, tell me everything I need to know about GMBL.
Email me, jeff@esportsentertainmentgroup.com. I will spend an hour on the phone with you, and it'll be more beneficial than this now.
And he'll learn how to properly use his mic.
I'm still trying. I mean, if someone wants to teach me, I'm
You're fine. You're fine. You just don't need to be self-conscious.
Adam got me all self-conscious.
Christian says, can't believe it's taking GameStop so long to get into e-commerce. It's 2021. I mean, that was just not their business, right? When you have 5,000 stores, and that's Jeff, when you said there was a documentary on GameStop, I thought you meant The Last Blockbuster documentary.
That was also a good documentary.
Oh, yeah.
I watch a lot of TV and documentaries. That one was good. The GameStop one was better. It's got like Kramer in it, Portnoy. It's really really high value or high production value, honestly. Like you would think the first documentary that was out like 3 weeks after the event happened would be like kind of crap. It's like pretty well done, like documentary.
What's it called, actually?
I don't remember.
Cool.
I'm sure you can probably
It's
Google
called
it.
Game Stonk.
Adam really,
That's a good name too. That's a creative name.
Adam really wants no one to be visible on the bottom here. The only thing they have he says the only thing they have on Best Buy is how they do pre-orders and midnight launches. Having worked at GameStop, they can clear a line of 100 people in a matter of minutes. Best Buy, I've seen nothing but horror stories. That being said, Best Buy has everything I need to set up a gaming station aside from a desk all in one spot. Audio, video, networking, console. I can pick up almost everything I need to build a PC and don't have to go anywhere else. I mean, Adam, this is why I think they make this announcement that I had put up, right? Like they want to get into selling PC parts and hardware and all that kind of stuff, audio, video, TVs. The question is, can they? Because I don't think that's simple, right? Like, where do you stock all that stuff? Where do you
Yeah, that was going to be my point, Paul. Exactly, was that's my one challenge I foresee with them being competitive in e-commerce. Because if you look at a company like Walmart, how they've completely pushed back against Amazon because they have these just natural distribution centers that also double as retail fronts. But if we think about GameStop, yeah, they have the real estate, they have so many locations, but those locations are so small. They're in malls, they can't house a lot of product. So I just worry, like, I feel like they're going to have to invest in distribution centers on top of the stores that they already have. And I just wonder if it's just going to burn a hole for them. I don't know.
How funny would it be if they partnered with Amazon and everything was fulfilled by Amazon?
There you go.
Because Amazon does do that, right?
Yeah.
You can use Amazon warehouses as another e-commerce player.
Or Shopify. They just launched that esports team, right?
True.
Mm.
Maybe they won't go it alone. Christian says more likely GameStop gets bought out or left to die by already established competition. Who would buy them, Christian? Especially at like where they're trading.
Where they're trading, nobody. But I think there was a time where you could have made a compelling argument, like PE could have come in, closed a lot of the stores. Basically, You had the real estate as an asset. I think that was the bull case when the stock was like $5 that Michael Burry, the guy from The Big Short, basically made like, this thing's trading cheaper than the real estate value. And you have a console cycle that, we know there's going to be physical discs. So this at least isn't going to completely go away. You kind of could have just like wrote it out because it still generates cash flow, I think, from what I recall. So it's at the right price, it would have been a decent private equity acquisition, but clearly not at 15 billion.
Yeah. Robert says a quarter of the store is Funko Pops. And Adam says, remember, Paul, you're going to buy them for pennies and just close it. I think you said that last year. Yeah, the problem is, Adam, the stock's now at $120.
Yeah, you're not buying it for pennies now.
Unfortunately, there's no buying it for pennies. Although I still think if it was worth it is worth actually pennies, that is the play. And I think to Jeff's point, my ideas were very similar to what maybe a big PE shop would have done, which is close most of the unprofitable stores or all the stores and try and do a deal. I told you, like, it's like 2 years ago, try and do a deal with like an Apple or someone who could use the physical locations to greater benefit. I mean, I saw an article this week talking about how Apple failed in gaming. And it was this really long article about, how they sort of screwed up Apple Arcade and all this potential is down the drain. Maybe had they bought GameStop and turned them into very fancy Apple arcades, that would have worked.
But they effectively already own the digital version of GameStop, right? Like they literally are the app store that takes 30% of every single mobile. Like GameStop is a shitty distribution channel.
Yeah.
App Store is literally the perfect, like it's essentially too good. They're getting sued because it's a monopoly.
So what Apple's really good at is that like that really compelling retail experience, right? And that's the fourth point that maybe GameStop could compete on, right? Because Best Buys are not like, oh my God, I'm so happy I'm in a Best Buy. Like, let's make an afternoon out of it, right? But Apple could do that.
Yeah. I'll just never
gaming.
Understand why they didn't shift to some type of experience-based models, given the amount of retail stores they had and where they were located. Like,
I mean, my own sort of take on this is when you have two pivots, one towards Hot Topic and the other towards Sears, like it's not a great, like something's wrong with how you're thinking about your business model is my own personal opinion here.
I was thinking Radio Shack, but we are on the same wavelength.
Yeah, Radio Shack, actually, that's a very good parallel. Like it feels to me like and the Hot Topic is an allusion to all these Funko Pop comments that are getting posted here. Like Adam says, hey, Robert, it's just going to become a Funko Pop store.
It's basically what they are. I mean, let's be honest.
Like, but it's like, it feels like other companies did this and like do this. And like, it's not like a movement into white space or a movement into something totally new. It's like a movement into something that's already been tried. And it feels like in general, it also sort of feels like there's this underlying challenge, which is the problem they're having is the digitization of the games industry. Like, I'm not sure how e-commerce, like, I know e-commerce is online. I don't see how that addresses this. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I agree.
I think the
And
thing that we always fail to, sorry, Victoria, the thing we
No.
fail to talk about with GameStop a lot is everyone just talks about how e-commerce is going to hurt their sales, but it actually hurts them even further down the line because most of their profits actually come from trade-ins where they do the buying and the selling of used games. So clearly, if someone's buying a digital game, the used market literally doesn't exist in that case. So that's why even the pivot to e-commerce, like, there is a little bit of an innovator's dilemma here, and you know that they're going to have to overcome. But
1,000%. I was just going to say this is the same issue with, like, take Blockbuster for example. Netflix offered to sell to them for $10 million, and Blockbuster said no, they weren't interested. Right, so now it's just a laughing stock. But even if Blockbuster had said yes, we'll buy you, that doesn't solve the retail space issue of what they do with that. They would just have to essentially just leave all of their spaces, just offload all of their properties, and then just focus on that. So when I think about GameStop, yes, they could pivot into e-commerce, and potentially maybe they could save themselves, bring the right people on board, and get to a place where they're extremely profitable. But that doesn't solve the issue about what they do with their current business, right? They either need to just, like, and Lindsay, I love the idea of having like a live gaming center, somewhere you can come in, game, especially like we talked about in certain communities where they don't have places to go and there's great high-speed Wi-Fi. It all makes sense. But all of my experiences with GameStop they're pretty small. That's the GameStops I've been to, that they're very small.
I think you
Yeah.
can still create compelling experiences, though. Like, I don't think it has to be a mega store to have a compelling, like, the whole quote. I'm trying to remember it's who said it, but like, it's not, retail's not dead. Bad retail is dead, right? And GameStop has been bad retail, and so the more obvious pivot would have been just like fix the retail. Their pivot is we're going completely e-com. That's maybe not so obvious.
Yeah. No, it's fair.
Adam says, I'm just imagining something like
so
a Saber Store episode from The Office. Fancy Apple-like store that's open for a day, then it shuts down. Kind of like Microsoft stores. It's a good analogy. Guys, we talk about this on the podcast a lot. Like, tune in tomorrow. It's a really great topic, and we unpack it quite a bit. Before we move on to stories we didn't cover on the podcast, I'm assuming everyone wants to touch on Discord. Okay. And so to keep this sort of limited and structured, here's what I would like. And this includes everyone watching or listening right now. Okay. I would like to go around and just get a sense from all of you. 2 questions. Okay. 1, do you think this rumored deal will actually happen? Okay. Microsoft will buy Discord. And 2, is the $10 billion price tag, you think, reasonable, crazy? Like, where are you on the price?
I'll
Jeff,
start
with you.
You're pretty.
Just go in.
I think both those answers are. I think yes, I do think this will actually happen, and I think the price will probably be significantly higher. When I say significantly higher, 15 to 20 billion. When all is said and done, I just think and I know I'm going to embellish a little bit. I know you wanted us to give a sharp answer, but I think the key here is Slack, right? Slack was bought by Salesforce for, I forget what, I think it was 30 billion.
29, I think, or 28, something like that.
Oh, 20. Sorry, Paul. 29 billion. Okay, 30
well,
billion.
What's a few billion among friends?
Precise, right? Let's be precise here.
Just round it.
And
so, it's like, is that you say potato, I say 32 billion.
So I think this is all about Microsoft and their Office suite of collaboration software. Skype sucks. Teams sucks. Discord is pretty good. So what I think is really interesting, and Paul and I had a little side conversation about this the other night, where does this sit within Microsoft if this deal happens? Does it report into Phil Spencer? Is it a gaming acquisition? Or does it sit within the Office suite of products and report to whoever runs, Microsoft Office and Microsoft Collaboration, Cloud, whatever, which is clearly a much, much larger fish at Microsoft? My guess is it will be the latter. But yeah, that's my kind of take on all of it.
Lindsay, I'm curious where you fall on this.
My streamer light just died even though I checked it and had 35% battery when we started. So whatever model I have, don't buy it. Anyways, 10 billion does strike me as a little low, especially since I think that the potential to grow there is so much more, especially after this year, and especially because Discord is definitely a better product than a lot of what's out there. I do think that Microsoft, if they can get it for 10 billion, should probably jump on it, because Teams is terrible. They can definitely afford it. Do I think it'll happen? I have no idea. No idea what those conversations are like in the back room.
Interesting. Victoria?
Yeah, I agree with the other guys. I think it'll go for much more than 10 billion. I think it's definitely in its infancy. It has a long way to grow. I think that they should buy it. I think that it's a perfect fit, and I think they desperately need it. So I would like to see them strike a deal. I think it's going to be a much higher price tag, but I couldn't give you a guess of how much more.
William, I know, anyone who's going to listen to the podcast tomorrow, William obviously had some great takes on this at much greater length, but maybe, sort of a quick tidbit or something that.
Well, I just can't believe you will all think 10 billion is low. Like, that's what I said to Paul. I was like, I just cannot believe that you're like, oh, it's just spend more because it was such a value. Like, it's
a steal.
I understand more users than Twitter. Okay. I get that. I get more users than Twitter. Okay, fine. But guys, first of all, I talk about my Star Wars metric. This is 2.5 Star Wars. Let's start there. That's a lot of Yoda, that has to happen. But it's also like, at what point does valuing a business on users make no sense? Like, what is the value of your public water utility? It has a lot of users. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure it's a great business to own if you could buy it privatized. Like, the point I'm making here is, like, inherently large user reach, I think, like, it has a cap to what it does. And in a business like this, where it is more analogous to a utility, right? Like, this is analogous to a phone company, and phone companies are utilities. And I don't think anyone today would be raving about opening a business where you put up telephone poles, right? Like,
William, are you comparing Discord to literally like a phone company?
Okay, Paul, two things. First of all, we've talked about this so many times. I have to disagree with you guys so that there's a conversation.
I know.
Right?
And this is
like,
I get it.
And
only you can do that effectively and argue both sides.
And that's second of all, bear with me a little here, guys, because yeah, it's a bad analogy on the surface, but it sort of illustrates my point, which is these connectivity businesses in and of themselves, right? Like, these piped businesses, like, I don't know if valuing them on user numbers is the right way to value them, right? I would push back a little bit on that, because I still go back to the thing, like, it's just the model of a freemium voice chat software. I don't see how that monetizes effectively. And I know if anybody fixes it, it's Microsoft, right? Because they have all the things that plug into it that do it. But I think it's a tough pill to swallow 10 billion for a platform where you're generating the revenues off of it, which is why but I agree with you guys. I think if it does close, it closes way above 10 billion, because I think the world we live in today is a world where user numbers are so valuable, and where this completes a triumvirate of Microsoft strategy that they badly need. But I think it ends up going ahead at a much higher number, but we'll see.
Greg said, no way they accept 10 billion. Greg, I agree with you. Chris says 1 yes, 2 no. Chris, I assume you mean that the deal will close with Microsoft. No, that not at 10 billion. I assume that's what you meant. Or it's not worth 10 billion. And the other comment was Mixer 2.0. See, Chris, I'm going to push back there. And I talk about this on the podcast. I don't think this is fair, right? Because yes, you can point to like Skype or Mixer or some of these other transactions, but I can also point to Minecraft, and Microsoft did wonders with Minecraft, right? Minecraft today is worth far more than the 2.5 billion they paid. So there's no guarantee Microsoft's going to mess it up just because they shut down Mixer. I think there is a whole conversation though, and I don't know if you guys want to have it, around like, why would they shut down Mixer and then proceed to spend like 20 billion plus on Bethesda and like
Yeah,
and-
like
and
I just want to
Discord?
reiterate that. Can somebody explain that to me? Because like this is like if you're having trouble with your streaming platform, this would seem to be the best way to fix it. Like the literal best thing you could buy, particularly given how integrated streaming is with Discord today. Like this is like the perfect acquisition to ramp Mixer. Right?
It is weird. It is weird. I would love if someone has a theory on those things. Christian says, I think Microsoft should buy Discord and wants to. 2, I think Discord hasn't hit its peak yet. Hold out like Snapchat. Christian, I tend to agree. I agree with you. I don't know if they should hold out, but I think they definitely should be pushing for a bigger number, which also begs the story. Who do you think leaked this story? Do we think it's Discord or do we think it's Microsoft? Does anyone have a thought there?
Probably Discord, right? If they're looking to get a higher price.
You think they're trying to create a bidding war by leaking this?
Yeah, probably.
That
Anyone
makes
think
sense.
different?
Makes sense. Also, a good way to think about it is 10 years ago, Microsoft bought Skype for 8.5 billion. So that in itself makes me think that this is so low. So William, yes, $10 billion, obviously a ton of money, but in comparison, 10 years ago for Skype, 8.5 billion. And this obviously has the stickiness, it has the adoption, the proof success, and just why build it yourself?
It's like 1/15 of an Elon Musk. I don't know how anyone thinks that's a lot of money. I mean,
I love the slander there. We will tolerate that.
Chris says, how much has Google Apps hurt Microsoft Office Suite? Chris, I'm curious where you're going with that.
I don't think much. I think what's hurt Microsoft, Zoom has probably hurt, Microsoft more than Google.
Probably. Although Teams has had pretty significant growth since COVID. Will they sustain that? I don't know. It's a terrible product. I mean, Robert says we currently use Microsoft Teams sucks, and we had management joke about Discord, but they only heard that it's for video games. People know about it. Robert, I will say, for my own team, we use Discord, not Slack, not Teams, not Zoom, not Google Meet, none of those things. Discord only, and it's so much better. I don't understand why most companies don't use it, frankly. Adam says, I bet it stays as a gaming thing and integrates with Xbox, then gets cloned, reskinned, and has business features added and replaces Teams. Who here loves this idea? Because I think this is a great idea. This makes a lot of sense to me.
This is exactly what I
splits,
thought.
Splits the problem. It's pretty decent actually as an idea because you basically take all the Discord tech, you wire it into something else that's more custom built for a business setting. Yeah, I actually quite like it. I think it's pretty smart.
Greg says, I think they hold out. Recently raised at 7 billion and no need to sell. Yeah, this is the other wrinkle, right? Which is if you invested at 7 billion, are you happy with 10 4 months later?
You should be, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
right.
It is a game, just a little
Context
one.
of other things happening in the industry. Are you happy with 10 4 months later? I don't like what are the investors don't hold a lot like of equity. Like they raised only 100 million in the last round at a 7 billion valuation, right? So that's not like they're wielding a ton of influence, most likely.
Yeah, probably those investors just have to take it, right? They bought like such a tiny portion of the company. Yeah. The answer is like, well, it's not a down round, so we'll call us when the check clears. Yeah, but you have to admit, raising the interesting thing is raising 100 on 7 billion felt like getting ready for something. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like that doesn't feel like if you have a $7 billion cap valuation, the 100 doesn't feel like the sort of capital raise you do. And you're like, well, that was a great, it feels like more of an appetizer, which again, all of this makes me think this is in lieu of or preempting a public markets play,
Christian, I think this was in reply to you, William, says Discord is more than just units of users. It's also about the community value backing it. Yeah. I mean, if I'm going to defend William here, like that's tough to like put a number to though, right?
The problem with the IPO
way more
play,
defensible though.
So
Yeah.
I've been thinking that, I mean, in this market, IPO, SPAC, I mean, it makes sense. But if you look at what their revenue was, just according to a quick Google search, like they did 100, like it's less than 200 million. So you'd have to get a pretty aggressive multiple to beat that $10 billion number. Now for Microsoft, they might not necessarily care because they want the users. They think it's a better product than Teams and Slack, and they can, figure out ways to monetize it. But if you're going public with 200 million of revenue, trying to support a $10 billion valuation, or you obviously have to beat a $10 billion valuation if you're evaluating it versus the Microsoft offer, like that's a little bit harder to do, even in today's market.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a social network, guys, right? Like you need the scale to be able to monetize. Like you can't monetize a Discord when you have 10,000 users or 100,000 users. Like you need this level of scale to turn the monetization taps on. Just because they haven't figured that out yet, to me, when you're playing as a social network, it's more forgivable, at least in my mind.
I don't know. It's like, oh, here we go. Good comment here.
Chris says Paul is Stephen A. Smith will skip Bayless. There you go. The question is, Chris, who do you usually agree with, Stephen Smith or Skip Bayless? Roblox already dropping in stock because of users equal value. I don't know if you guys feel like that's why the stock's dropping.
I would not. I agree with most of what Chris says, but I wouldn't necessarily agree with that because they haven't reported any quarters yet. So it's not like, the information that existed 2 weeks ago is the same information that people are evaluating on now. I think it's more like just a broader market move away from kind of some of these high growth names into different names. But
yeah. Adam says,
which maybe is just a longer way of saying what Chris said, but I don't think it's a Roblox specific thing.
Adam says, I bet they give you the Nitro subscription bonus if you have Xbox Game Pass. Adam, I said this exactly on the podcast, which you'll listen to tomorrow. It's exactly what I said. And so I agree with you. Chris says, being facetious, of course. There you go. To Will's point earlier, I need a box on this show. Chris, we do have to talk about that. All right. I think unless you guys have other thoughts on Discord, any sort of last parting thoughts before we move on to other news? I do think Discord as a piece of software is actually not that good. I just think the timing was so good. The feature set was simple enough. Like the product is fundamentally good and solid. And it'll be interesting to see sort of how this plays out and what kind of price they get, or if they wait to go public. Let's move on. Let's talk about, guys, we can take a related story here, sort of related, which is, another sort of big number story. And I'll put this up in a second here, which is, hang on. This was from Epic. Sky News, Fortnite owner Epic Games worth $28 billion as fundraising taps lockdown bonanza. Epic Games, which I like how they say these subheadlines always crack me up. Epic Games, which also owns the video chat app House Party, as if that's a big part of the $28 billion valuation.
That's like
Epic
most
Games
of the value is in House Party.
Which famously just bought Fall Guys developer.
Yeah.
As most people know them as the acquirer of Fall Guys.
Yeah.
Is close to concluding another $1 billion fundraising. Sky News can reveal. They talk about how they're closing this round. The last round, the company was valued at $17.3 billion after a $1.78 billion capital raise last July. So what would that? So about almost a year later, right? And it included a $250 million contribution from Sony.
Hold on, guys. I have a question. Was House Party a smash hit like this pandemic season? Because it says that in the article. Did I miss something about that? If you go to the article, it's like House Party, one of this pandemic smash hits. I was like, oh, it
got used a lot in the beginning, and then it slowed down.
Yeah, that's true.
It was like 2 months in, everybody was doing House Party, and then it just stopped.
Yeah, I actually don't think I've ever used it.
You know what's interesting? It's actually quite similar to a Clubhouse, if you think about it. It's just almost branded differently.
Hold on. Let's do Epic Games. So I got distracted by that. I was like, it could be very possible. I just didn't know people were using, like, I still don't know how to pronounce Twitter. Like, it's very hard for me to use that one correctly. So
What do you mean?
That's why he doesn't follow me
that was a
back.
joke,
I'm
Paul.
still
That was
bitter.
a joke.
I'm still bitter.
Paul's like, that's how you say it, right?
Okay. In the context of what we just discussed about Discord, is Epic raising money at 28 billion a year after they raised at 17.8 billion? Again, in this context, does anyone feel differently about the Discord transaction? And the fact that Epic can just go out and say we're raising $1 billion and everyone's piling in.
Yeah, this is a weird one too, because, like, would you say Epic as a company versus a year ago is in a stronger or a weaker position today?
It's a really good question. It's a really good question. Does the crux of it is, does the acquisition of Fall Guys make up for whatever decline is happening in Fortnite?
There's two things going on here, right? Because I would say it's not even Fortnite, it's the Apple Google Play Store thing. So two things. One is that feud is not a big enough feud to matter in the context of their own platform success, the Epic Games Store, right? That's one way of looking at it. The other thing, you're exactly right, is that their future pipeline of content, such as the Fall Guys acquisition, outweighs any softness in a home title like Fortnite, right? To justify what's essentially a 50% premium, though, you're going to have to
even, right?
More. Yeah. Sorry, I can't do math. It's very hard for me. So, whatever premium they got, like, it's a huge premium, right, to get quickly.
Yep.
To me, I read that as it has to be the Epic Games Store success. That's the only thing I think that you look at, particularly in the context of them also being in a platform war. It has to be that, and people being able to say, wow, because then that also puts the feud with Apple and Google in a different context, because it's sort of like, hey, we have our own platform. We might figure out a way to do mobile too. You know what I mean? Like, we might not need these guys as a long-term solution. So look, we had a fight with Steam and we worked it out, like, now we can do this as well. So I just, pointing that out, I think it's interesting. Like, to me, I think sort of the great unsung story of the last year is how successful Epic Games Store has been. I'm not saying that because of data. I'm just saying it because of what I'm seeing in the market. It looks like it's being treated and viewed and acted on as a success in a very significant way. Enough so that essentially all of the value generated by Fortnite, right? Like, all of Fortnite, whatever is happening in that is worth essentially about half as much as a Fortnite, right? There's like half as much of a Fortnite in the Epic Games Store success, if you want to kind of do a very simple back of the envelope pricing cut on the business, right? More if you assume Fortnite is worth less now than it was a year ago.
I think
the other explanation, it's just financial markets have, like...
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, I think if you look at the comps, pretty much any video game business has doubled over the last year, any public one. And the ones that weren't public, like, their two biggest comps were what? Unity and Roblox. Last year, Unity was worth $6 billion. Now it's worth, I forget, but like 40. And Roblox was worth 4, and now it's worth 30. So, for Epic to double, they're actually vastly underperforming sort of who we would have considered their comps previously in the private market. And, everything in the public market has basically doubled as well. Activision, EA, Take-Two, Zynga, like pretty much anyone you want to name. So they're almost just like treading water, I think. Now, your analysis on the business, I think, is totally accurate, William, how, like, they are not in a better position. So maybe we could say this round isn't, fundamentally, like, the earnings shouldn't be valued as high. But, I think when people were looking at comps, that's just the math they do. So I think, yeah, it's the other side of the equation that
Does anyone think Epic stays private at this rate? And because Tim Sweeney wants to maintain some level of control and doesn't want public markets, doesn't want to answer to public markets. Like, you're already at an almost $30 billion valuation here, right? Like, do you really need, and they can raise money basically anytime they want. Like, they call this like, the way they characterize this fundraising is basically, there was like, they just asked for the money and investors showed up.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah, but
so
like
if you have access to capital, sorry, William, go ahead.
No, finish your point. Finish your point.
No, if you have access to capital and you don't have and you have the massive valuation and you don't have sort of the hassles of being a public company, why would Epic ever go public?
Well, I'll give you one simple reason I think is super compelling: the Robin Hood effect. I think you're going to get a 30% premium on your stock because everybody wants to own the company that makes Fortnite. I'm like really serious about that. So I think it's going to be incredibly hard for these guys to stay private for forever, because I think they're just like, and I think this is sort of the story of games companies, is when you're a successful, beloved games company, particularly in the modern era, I think the incentives to go public are surprisingly large, because you basically get you'll basically get a favorable lift from people who are like, lols, Fortnite, let's go. So I think that's one piece of it. I also think if you look at the competition that they have, like, they got to deal with Roblox. And the reality is, I get that they can get money easily in the private market today, but at some point you sort of need an exit, right? Like at some point, those investors and the amount of money they're going to need to compete with public vehicles, you're going to be forced into a public deal. So I think they're sort of on a size and scale and in a competitive set where they it's the natural path. It has to happen. The question is how long they hold out. And I kind of agree with you, Paul. I suspect this is a business that tries to hold out longer than many others would, because of the history and the legacy. And, I think there's a real sense, even today in game publishers, that you lose losing creative control is still a fear everywhere. And I think that's a chill that slows down. I think that's even why, bluntly, Bethesda maybe ended up going private through a Microsoft deal versus a public markets deal, right? Like, I know that's weird to say, but there's this real pall that hangs around a fear of game makers that go public and then lose their, and the classic example of this, by the way, guys, I'll point out, is CDPR, right? I think that's a recent example of a game developer where I think people, to some extent, are blaming Cyberpunk on the pressures of being a public company, right? I don't know if that's fair. I don't know if that's true, but I think that's a narrative that's out there.
To answer your point about them going public, I think they're going to go public sooner than we think. I mean, I bet we're going to have a very similar conversation sometime this summer that we had about Discord, of hey, the people that invested at 28 billion, should they be selling at 35 or should they be happy? I think they're going to go public with a valuation in the 30s. Mid to high 30s, this summer by September, my guess.
Guys, let's move on. Before we move on, I don't know if you guys want to tackle this, or if I need to put your email here again. But Roberto says, off-topic question: based on the EEG announcement of expansion to Latin America, what are your thoughts on the Latin Hispanic market as a regional opportunity for esports? We are not often mentioned / valued.
I mean, I could start, I guess. It's a huge market, particularly for esports betting. I mean, obviously that's part of the reason why we went into it, but definitely has, a robust esports culture, big esports market. You've seen companies like C Limited, Garena Free Fire has made a huge push into Latin America. I think a lot of the esport, there's a big mobile esports culture there as well, which doesn't necessarily tie into the betting aspect per se. Which I don't know if that's exactly what we were focusing on with the question, but it's clearly, a huge region. I mean, the demographics are good. Sort of you're seeing, per capita income rising, and that tends to be a good place to start, doing business in. And then clearly there's passion for esports there. So that's my take. I don't know if anyone else. Paul, I know you're a big fan of the Middle East, not nearly exactly the same thing, but you love opining on different regions. So maybe you have a take on Latin America.
I like the Middle East because, again, relatively young populations with lots of disposable income, right? So the demographics are working in your favor. I would say LATAM, I probably am less close to, just personally. And so it's not something I watch as closely, but I think all of these regional opportunities, there's massive opportunity, there's massive potential. And Latin America, especially recently, we're starting to see very large streamers, very large influencers. So now you have these beacons at the top to drive gaming, drive spending, drive all kinds of stuff at the grassroots level. I just think it's not a question of I don't talk about it because I don't value it. It's a question of you need people who are on the ground there, I think, to really understand it, or at least have someone on your team on the ground there who has been there to really understand it and be able to talk about it really authentically. But I do believe there's massive potential there. It's also just not like a massively like homogeneous market either. Like Brazil, which is arguably the largest, like they speak Portuguese and not Spanish, right? There's not a shared language either. So there are some complications just from a doing business there standpoint, but there's, and Chris brings this up, says what country in LATAM outside of Brazil shows value, though seems like a huge drop after one country. There's gamers in all these countries.
Chile.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not an expert. Maybe Roberto probably is more so. Maybe you can answer that for Chris, but
Lindsay,
yeah.
Did you want to jump in here? I know you want.
Yeah, I just thought that, one of the most popular live, two or three actually, the most popular live YouTube streams are Spanish speaking gamers. Yeah. And I believe they're based out of Mexico. I know that Mexico's scene has been growing. So I don't know what the drop off is like between that and Brazil, but it is a little bit different to measure just because so much of it is based in mobile. But I think just only kind of based off of the viewership numbers and all of that, and what we can see on social media and get from that, it's definitely growing at a pretty fast pace, which is good.
And Lindsay, you bring up a great point, which is mobile. Another market I would
Just
sort of compare to is like India, where you have a massive market growing at an incredible pace. But because it's all mobile, maybe it doesn't get the same amount of hype and attention. I think it does, but you know what I mean? But this would be one of those reasons why, maybe why those regions are mentioned less. Anywhere where mobile is the dominant form of gaming and dominant form of esports, that, again, there's potentially less discussion around it because it's just not as flashy or hyped as more traditional esports. But the potential's there, no question. I don't know if anyone had any other thoughts on that before I. And Roberto, Jeff's reachable if you want to talk about EEG specifically, what they're doing in Latin America. Cool. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about the YMCA. and
I like
and not
this
the
story.
song.
I like this story.
But the YMCA creating
you need
esports.
a soundboard. This is such a lost opportunity. I can't bear it anymore. I can't hear you introduce another article without the perfectly placed soundbite to just transition in. We just have to get this fixed.
We need a dedicated sound person, I think. The headline here is YMCA creates esports league and tournaments. And this was an announcement directly from YMCA saying the Y is excited to launch for the first time esports leagues and tournaments. Esports, they have to explain it, is video game competition for individuals and teams. Middle school and high school gamers in the Y's leagues and tournaments will enjoy gameplay in Super Smash Brothers, Rocket League, and NBA 2K21. League play will include local, regional, and national competitors within the Y organization. Would love everyone's thoughts, A, on how they feel about YMCA getting into esports, and B, specifically the games and sort of the target audience that they've chosen.
I'm a fan. I love
Go ahead.
it. It's a family-friendly, approachable, safe, community-based feel to it. I think it's also great because they're going to be located in a lot of areas with schools who probably don't have the funds to develop facilities like that. I think it's great, and I think that they chose safe choices for their games. Obviously, that didn't surprise me, but with some success and some more understanding of the space, maybe we'll see that develop.
William, Jeff, Lindsay, any thoughts, different thoughts on this? Chris asked a question. Great story, but what's next? We get VC money for pickup basketball games. How do you monetize YMCA? I will push back, though, because the question is maybe not necessarily how do you monetize YMCA, but A, what positive impact does this have on the industry if you make gaming far more and esports, competitive esports, far more accessible through the YMCA, sort of like a gateway drug. And then what's the potential impact on other competitors in the space? Like, does this cut into play versus business, for example?
Well, that was gonna be my question. I'm curious, like, what providers they're using, because the YMCA, I don't think they don't necessarily have banks of computers, software to do this, scheduling tools. So I'm curious, who they're using, and kind of maybe it is Play Versus, because they are kind of one of the leaders in this high school amateur esports scene. Maybe it's Super League. Who knows? But yeah, no, I echo
anymore, Jeff.
Yeah. I was kind of joking. I echo, what Victoria said and what you said. I think it's good. It's good for the scene. It's good for the community. And, to your point to Chris, it could be a good business, right? I wouldn't say it's a VC level, like, scalable business, but, some of these sports leagues and stuff like that, like the PAL or whatever, like, they make a ton of money, right? Like, you've got kids spending a lot of money to be on these teams and whatnot. So yeah.
I will say, sorry, Lindsay, go ahead.
No, you finish.
No, please go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think that this is just a really good community builder. It's, you can't compare high school basketball to YMCA rec league basketball in terms of the opportunities one provides versus the other. But what YMCA does do is provide structure and things for kids to do, especially in low income areas. And I just don't see any bad news with this. I don't think it's going to be like a huge money driver or anything, but it's what the kids want.
This is what I wanted to get at, though. Like, the cost here, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I clicked through and it says the YMCA esports program is available for youth in middle school, junior high school, and high school. YMCA esports participants will compete against each other in a supervised setting. And then it says cost, and this is what I don't understand. Players can only play one game due to structure of current league. And then it says the cost for individual games is $60. Does that not seem very high? Or am I misunderstanding something?
Is that for enrollment in a league?
That's
cheap.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe.
How much
maybe
of the cost
that's
to
what
enroll?
that's how I took
hold on.
it.
It's
Yeah.
April 5th to May 27th. So I guess it's multiple weeks. Yeah, okay. That seems more reasonable.
I just want to make one more point just off of what Lindsay said. Another reason I like this is because it's like everybody knows the YMCA and it's a trusted name. So I picture, like, a lot of parents, like, they don't know any of these other facilities. They don't know the people there running it. I just see the trust. I see the trust, and, like, there's nothing wrong with, hey, taking my kid down to the YMCA, the local YMCA. It's just approachable. So I think that they'll be successful.
This is very simple. Like, more kids need access to these games. Like, it's just, like, access is a real issue in gaming today. We're not as aware of it, but it really is a thing. I am a little concerned that these price points are, like, a little. I actually think I know they're low, but they might even be a little high for some of the demographics that get served by the Y. So there's a potential concern there, because I think the important thing here is the trend, which is this is making esports more available to people. You know what I mean? Like that's like a really good thing. Like, people need more of this. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, and you shouldn't not be able to play Rocket League because you don't have a PlayStation at home. That shouldn't be a problem people have today. So I think overall very good.
Guys, there's 3 stories here, and I kind of want to lump them all together because I want to see if you guys agree that maybe there's a trend or some bigger takeaway that from these 3 stories. And so the first really was around TikTok, the owner of TikTok, ByteDance, where they acquired a major mobile gaming studio. And in fact, I think it was reported that they paid about $4 billion. Okay, so here you have ByteDance, who wants to compete with Tencent in a big way on gaming, buying a gaming studio for $4 billion. The other story was Amazon Games opening yet another game development studio, this time in Montreal. So they're
keep on trying.
They're doubling down or tripling down or whatever we're at with Amazon, right? And then And then a third story where you have this this startup, where you've got Rick Fox, who's done stuff in esports, and their video game company High Def raised $7.5 million in funding. Again, game studio, and I'm just wondering, like, do you all see maybe a trend that game studios seem to be popping up everywhere? They seem to be continuously be raising more and more money. The big players are either buying or creating. Like, is there this? Do you feel that there's this trend that game studios are the new hotness?
Do you in any way see this analogous as to like tech startups, as in most startups now aren't looking to actually build their own company, but are looking to be bought by, we've reached that tipping point where like there's really, really big companies that tend to just buy smaller companies, and there's less medium sized, and then the small ones are either just pretty much just aiming to be bought by the big ones. Like, do you see this analogous to that type of development where like we've reached the point where there's, big companies that are going to purchase game developers, and the medium sized ones have kind of gone down, and then the small ones are, either indie in strictly used or trying to be bought by the big ones? It's like, it feels like almost the exact same development as what happened with tech startups.
Well, I think there's just a couple things in the market that are doing this. Like, one is like smaller companies get exits, exactly what you're sort of saying, Lindsay, right? And bigger companies are worth a lot. So it used to be nobody wanted to buy a game studio. Like, go back to, like 1990s. Like, I think it was hard to convince people that your game studio would have a tens of billions of dollars in terminal value, and that there were plenty of people who would happily buy you at every point along the scale curve, right? Now that does seem to be the case. And so it's a much more investable business, because you still need to have hits and everything. It's still hit driven, but there's more outcomes for more levels of hit. And the big hits are really worth a lot, right? So I think those things have changed to make this a more investable space, because the returns have really, and the opportunities to collect returns have really improved. I don't know. I mean, that being said, I think it's a bit difficult to liken, a startup company getting funding to Amazon opening a studio in Montreal. They're two very different scales of play. You know what I mean? Like, very different scales of play. But yeah.
But I bring the Amazon one into it because it's like, we just saw Google shut down their studio, right? And yet, and by the way, the person running that studio went and started another studio.
Yeah, but this is the Microsoft
in Montreal
strategy. You shut the things that are like the things you're doing. I don't know.
The most surprising one for me on this whole thing was the $4 billion.
This was actually
whatever. Before we get into Jade Raymond and how she continues to just find jobs in the industry, the $4 billion seems like a lot for that studio, right? I've never heard of them. The fact that they
like half a Discord.
That's like, to use a William, and that's literally one Star Wars. Like, that's massive for a company that I couldn't name one of their games. Can any of you?
William's Star Wars thing is going to become an industry standard. We're going to have analysts.
One Star Wars for something like that seems pretty wild to me. But yeah, I think other than that, William hit the nail on the head. I mean, these are simply better businesses, right? So it makes sense that there'd be more capital chasing the better businesses. So it's rational. Sometimes when we talk about it, we sort of talk about it as if like, oh, nothing has changed, and all of a sudden like gaming is hot. Like, there's a reason why it's hot. Like, these businesses have gotten better. So investors are usually reasonably rational. So there's a reason why they're chasing these things now. It's a better risk reward.
Okay, but let's hone in on the Amazon one. You're Amazon, right? You just saw Google shut down their studio. The person in charge of that studio, by the way, goes and creates another one in Montreal. And now you say, wait a second, we want to go open another studio in Montreal, even though they have not put out a successful game yet, right? Like, is this wise if you're Amazon to be doubling down before you've really proved out the model at all for yourself?
Well, it's Amazon. I mean, I respect that they're doing that, right? Like we can't have it both ways, right, Paul? We can't say Google was wrong, they cut the bait, Google didn't invest, they didn't commit the resources, and then also be like, well, Amazon's an idiot for doubling down. Like, how are they still
Amazon
committed?
already
They haven't
had a
done anything
studio.
in gaming. So it's like we gotta either commend the one that's doubling down and going all in, or say the one that cut bait was right. And I think we talked about it a bunch of podcasts ago. How Andy Jassy, the new CEO of Amazon, the first day he was on the job, he said, "Hey, we're committed to games." So, when someone that powerful says something like that day one on the job, dollars are going to follow that. So I think it's great that they're doing that. Will anything come of it? No, probably not, but it's good.
Supposedly
Good for the people who are getting
I
jobs.
think, who worked on Rainbow Six and stuff like that. So they have people who have delivered a game like on the team.
Yeah, that's
there.
a good team. That's a real team.
Victoria, you wanted to say something on this?
No, I completely agree with what Jeff just went off about. I agree. I mean, what's the move? Like, do they just back down? Like, they come out and say, like, we're gonna do this, and then they don't. Like, they have to go in aggressive. And at the end of the day, they just need one game to land. So and obviously that's a tall order. That's a huge order. But I'm just saying, like, they kind of got to keep going. And I know that they're going after those like AAA games, which it's going to be really, really tough. But I mean, that's just it. They're not going to stop. They're going to keep trying to find the right people, the right studio to bring that to life, I guess.
Christian says bigger publishers buying out smaller studios to create portfolios where chances are one will create a hit game. I think that, like, to answer Lindsay what you said, like, I think this is the natural evolution of things. Like, it's just how things go. You end up with some very big players with very deep pockets, and it creates this ecosystem of startups that build game studios or companies, if you're in broader tech, hoping to get bought out by the big companies. I mean, it's kind of the standard innovation cycle in any industry. And it's nice to see that gaming, I would argue, is now experiencing this. I think it shows a certain maturity in the market if we're at this stage where this cycle is happening.
Well, and it does also reward innovation a lot if there's that incentive to be bought out. So it is a good thing for the industry. It's just, it seems like it's happened so fast.
Chris says, where does Frost Giant rank on that list? Does RTS have a future versus another metaverse try? Anyone have thoughts on this?
I doubt they're going to make an RTS.
I think they came out this week and said they're doing that, no? Or someone said they're making an RTS.
I don't know. It's not a very popular genre, typically.
Maybe they'll bring it back. It was at one point. Someone, I can't remember. I think Frost Giant did announce an RTS, but someone else this week said they're making an RTS, and I'm not sure. No, actually.
Well, given that the whole negative spin for Amazon Studio was that they basically just picked whatever was the hot game of the day and essentially did like a crappy rescan or clone of it. So what's the hottest game right now? Like, what's the hot, like, sexy new trend? Like Fall Guys? Like, what's hot?
I'll tell you what's hot. This is the answer. So when
Valheim, whatever you call it.
No, in the article about High Def, the Rick Fox sort of studio there, right? When asked sort of what their funding is going to go towards, they said it's going to go towards their flagship game. And this is direct quote, currently described as a genre-defining metaverse.
That checks out. I have no problem with that.
I mean, you don't need to say like.
How can they fail if they're building a metaverse? How is it possible for them to fail?
But that is, I feel like, if you're a game developer right now, the response you have to give. It has to be genre defining, and it has to be a metaverse. Like, to me, it was the perfect.
Are they saying that
soundbite.
they're defining the genre of metaverse, or it's just going to be a metaverse and define some sort of genre? I feel like they need some punctuation. They need some punctuation there.
But and then they continue on. The CEO continues. Anthony Castoro says, "Our mission at High Def is to make games that have a meaningful impact on people's lives." It's a level of vagueness, and that I think you see a lot in early stage game development shops right now.
I've said this
You
before
also
on the
can't
podcast.
hold that against these people, right? Like they're not
I'm
going to.
not holding it against them.
Our amazing idea is this, and like they gotta. You have to
be a
be
little
It's just
more
funny.
realistic, though.
It's just funny. Yeah.
I've said this before on the podcast, and maybe I'm a cynic or negative. Like the person who builds the metaverse eventually will definitely not be some startup that sets out, raises $5 million, and says we're going to build the metaverse. It's just not going to be that. It's either going to form out of like some defense department project or one of the big major players, or someone who just stumbles upon it, who's trying to build something else that's cool. Like Tim Sweeney. Like I don't think he set out to build the metaverse, but now he has, right? But I don't think 20 years ago when he first got into gaming, he was like, I'm going to build the metaverse. Maybe that's wrong, but he didn't at least say that day. He didn't say that in his first startup. Like I'm going to build the metaverse when he was building whatever, his first game was.
I think you're right, and I also think William's totally right. Like the reality is they're not going to come out and say exactly what they're doing. And everyone right now sort of is playing this game of, the whole word metaverse is hot and you want to be associated with that. I mean, so I think they have to do it, right? Like they're not going to say we're building a simple game that may be fun. Like that's not going to be the announcement. So, we'll see. Adam says it's Game Developer Simulator, calling it. This is Adam. Now this is way too meta.
It's a metaverse where you build a metaverse. You just go to work every day and design games in in this virtual world.
In this metaverse. That's it. All right. Any other last thoughts on Amazon other than hoping that they make an MMO?
Let's just make an MMO, guys. We need more MMOs.
Didn't they try that? They had an MMO, right?
They have an MMO in development, right?
I think they do or did. I don't know.
I don't know.
Doesn't matter. They have it.
All right. I
still haven't figured out the difference between MMO and metaverse. I mean, I feel like we went down that rabbit hole one podcast. Never really understood why they're different.
I have two stories here, guys. You can decide.
We're all just going to ignore that, I guess. It just wasn't worth a response.
None for you, Jeff.
It's
two stories,
Ahead,
Paul.
Paul.
What are our two
They're
stories?
the same thing.
What are our two stories, Paul?
It's just that's such a rabbit hole, Jeff. We're going to spend the next hour arguing about the metaverse.
Fair enough.
We could, but I think for now, no one really knows what it means. That's just the reality. There's an F1 story, which we could talk about, and there's a Qualcomm Nintendo Switch story, which may be more interesting, a hardware story.
Qualcomm.
All right, let's do Qualcomm story. This one's from The Verge. And the headline here is, give me a second. So wonky, their sharing system now. Qualcomm's reportedly developing a Switch-like Android gaming device. The subheadline here is like a phone, but bigger and with controllers. It's going to be built on top of Android. It's going to have a huge battery, a big screen. It's going to be basically a phone with controllers. This is not the picture of it. This is the ROG phone, the ROG phone. And the price target for the device is $300, directly in line with the Switch. And it will have top specs sort of thing, right? Processor, everything else. We've talked multiple times. The recurring theme is about sort of, can anyone create a competitive console, right? And I think the reaction has always been no. This is a bit of a different take, right? Because it's kind of like Qualcomm makes, first of all, a lot of the underlying chips, like processors and things that power phones and modems and all those kinds of things. Could Qualcomm actually create something that could be competitive? And because it's Android, people will have games to play on it. Does anyone feel this could be the next console?
Are you going to create? Is it going to be mobile games, or what are you playing on? Is it console games?
Mobile. Obviously, it's Android based, so you're playing games that are on the Android, like on the Google Play Store. So they're mobile games.
Is it a good phone? People don't buy phone. So no. Oh no! I can't believe I'm having to do this. No, why? Why would the beauty of mobile gaming is that you already have the device and its accessibility. Why would I want to carry around my amazing iPhone or whatever device I use to call people and text people and check Twitter and social media and whatever, and then also have another device that's exactly the same size, exactly the same weight, dimensions, that plays mobile games?
Why do people buy Nintendo
weight or
Switches?
dimensions? Yeah.
Because Nintendo Switch has content. You can't play Mario anywhere else, right? They made like
Mario.
5 mobile games that sucked, but like they never went into mobile. So that's why they're able to do that.
Oh,
because
Jeff,
they-
I
This has
disagree
no
with you
shot.
so much. So much. I disagree with you almost
which part?
wholeheartedly here.
Let's hear it, Lindsay. Let's hear the.
Okay, so I don't think that this will necessarily be successful in the North American market. I want to start with that. But I do think that globally, where people don't have a lot of access to consoles and they only have access to mobile, this is a good in-between. And it's a good in-between price point. And it costs a lot less than a high-end mobile phone where people would play games. So if you have someone who's actually trying to develop and maybe become like a professional player or get into the scene more, or is just really into gaming, this is an extremely accessible device that has higher processing power than a phone, that has a bigger screen, and allows you to work on your controls a little bit more than a phone does, since it actually comes with controller-like capability.
But
So I don't.
why?
Hold on. Lindsay
What do you
makes a good
mean?
point, though.
Okay.
That, like,
This is all in developing markets too. I'm not talking about this for the U.S.
let me just defend Lindsay for a second here. Do you guys not agree that there's some segment of the mobile market, right, that does not want to move up to a console or a PC, but
So
is a
But
more
can't.
Here's what
hardcore-
I think destroys your point a little bit, Lindsay. And I think it's a good one. This is the most compelling argument someone has given me for one of these pseudo consoles why it could work. But you're describing a person who doesn't have enough money to actually just buy a phone, but has enough money to spend $300 on what effectively is a mobile gaming tablet. Like, what are they going to use to call their friends if they want to have a phone? They're gonna
No,
have
I'm
something
not
really
saying
cheap.
instead of a phone, in addition to a phone.
Yeah. Like, why do you
they're
guys
not-
not?
80% of the world runs on Android. So first of all, phones are significantly more expensive anyway. Even the cheapest phones are around $400 or $500.
Right.
So it's also technology is one of the things that people buy the most, even when they're at lower price points.
But who-
So
I
go
guess what I'm struggling to figure out the person who is like, I don't have enough money to buy a $400 phone, but I'm going to buy a $300 device that's basically a mobile gaming
Can I answer that question?
app.
There.
thing.
I think there is a segment of mobile gamers, right, who have it doesn't matter how much they spent on their phone. They play a lot of games on their phone, right? And they love mobile gaming. They don't want to be console gamers. They don't want to be PC gamers. They love mobile gaming, okay? Who maybe as they get serious about mobile gaming say, wait a second, if I could have a device where it has a fan so it runs my games faster for longer, it has a big battery, it has controllers, and I can play my mobile games at a higher level. You don't think there's any segment of the mobile market that is called
Maybe.
hardcore
do you know
mobile?
what commute
So
times
you
are
guys,
like in
so my problem is
Bangladesh?
you guys literally just
3 hours.
you guys argued literally the exact opposite sides of the spectrum. Lindsay said, hey, phones are expensive in third world countries. Like there's a,
Not at all what I
this
said.
is a lower price point. People are going to buy it in lieu of a phone. And then Paul,
No!
you said, no, this is a high end
God.
device that someone who has a phone is going to buy it because it's so good in
I didn't say
addition
high
to
end.
their phone.
I said more hardcore. It's only
I also
$300 still.
this is not a substitute for a phone. Throw away the phone. The phone doesn't matter. I never thought the phone mattered.
But if my phone can do everything that this thing can do, right?
What can't
what are
though.
the Okay, so if it has differentiating factors, then maybe you're right. Maybe there is a
It has a
market
bigger
for it.
screen, faster processing, and the ability to play with a controller. Not to mention it's portable. So if
You're
if you're living
describing
in
an
India,
iPad. Who buys iPad? Has anyone ever bought an iPad? to
no,
play
it's
games?
still different. It's
Adam
in
says,
between.
hang on, guys, hang on. Adam says, so the Asus ROG Phone 5, yeah. Although some of the latest Asus ROG phones are getting rave reviews, just FYI. Christian says, don't think the Qualcomm hardware idea is a bad idea. Everyone uses phones and have to have something that integrates to have something that integrates with that sounds logical. The question is execution. Yeah, I think what everyone agrees on is it has to be differentiated in some way from your phone. And I think the way is to appeal to that more hardcore mobile market with features that appeal to that hardcore mobile market.
Maybe.
Adam says, I bet if they use older chips, which are still pretty fast, low resolution panel and a decent sized battery, they could pull it off. They don't need a cellular modem. They don't need cameras and they don't need fancy software features. Yeah.
Mhm.
Or take all those cost savings and put them in the better chip and the bigger battery. Chris says there's a Chinese import market that offers the same thing for way less. Yeah, I mean, you can always get, pretty crappy.
If the argument was like this is a device that costs like $25 and you can like give it to your kid and he can destroy it, like maybe I'd say there's some market for it, but like it seems like the we're trying to fit into a very narrow window where $300 is not cheap,
I don't think
but it
so.
doesn't feel like it's going to be unless it's differentiated. I guess that's the big question.
Does no one believe there's a hardcore mobile gamer market? People who play
There
mobile games
definitely is.
the same way some people grind WoW
You're
on
basically-
PC.
you're
or like-
basically making the analogy that this will be to mobile phones what PC is to console, sort of, right? That's the analogy.
Well,
Exactly.
no, it's like
Sort
if
of,
you
but-
look at the PC gamer universe, right? You have people who are PC gamers who get on, play a little bit of Terraria or like like some like more casual game. I'm so not a casual gamer. I'm struggling to even name like two.
Farming
and-
Simulator.
Sure, right? And they play for half an hour and then they go back to whatever they're doing. And then you have PC gamers who sit at their PCs and play 10 hours straight of Escape from Tarkov, need to have the best keyboard, the best mouse, the best of everything, the best grab, right? So you have these different categories even within PC gaming. What I'm postulating here is that differences exist in the mobile gaming market in the same way, where you have
Jeff,
someone who
why
doesn't
would-
care how Candy Crush is running on their phone, right? And then
Why
ones
would a
who
Kindle
are playing.
exist? Why would a
Why would
Kindle
it-
exist if everyone could just buy an iPad? People like differentiated products for certain things.
Kindle's a lot cheaper than an iPad, though, right? It's like $65.
No, the nice ones are up to exactly in that price range. There are cheaper versions, but like the cheapest nice one is like $150. Or not even, yeah. There's like crap readers. I'm sure there'll be crap versions of this too.
That's fair. I mean, it's a valid point. Like, you've
Oh,
made
Jeff, yell!
you've made good
Yell!
arguments. I will just take, first I want to hear Victoria. I don't think Victoria's given her opinion yet, but I will also take.
I don't know if I
make a
want to
bet.
get in on this.
This is what we like to do. We like to bet on this.
I'm ready.
Yeah. Okay. So I hate to say it, but I was kind of with Jeff at the beginning on this. But hold on. I've opened my eyes. I've been listening. So when we're talking about that segment, and I'm trying to imagine that segment, I can see that in certain areas of the world, there's a lot of people who don't have great internet connection. So I could see them going to cafes, right? Or going to areas and they're traveling there, going to play, even just on their phone already. And they could be extremely loyal mobile gamers because that's what they do. I don't think that $300 is out of the question. It's high, but if they're really invested in it, they spend a lot of time. I see it, especially if it's portable in the sense that they need to go to places where they have really good internet connection in order to, play at a high level. I understand the appeal. Do I think it's going to be, widely adopted across the world and everyone is going to have one of these? That's a bit of a stretch for me, but I do agree that I can see the appeal. I think there's definitely a segment of people who they log hours and hours and hours and hours on their phone, and they would be interested in playing the same games in the same way, not changing their lifestyle, so not changing how they go about playing, but upping up their device. So I could see it.
Yeah, I think, and it's weird because I'm the in some ways the anti-mobile guy, but like what I'm really excited about this is because I do believe there is a segment of the mobile market that consider themselves more hardcore gamers, right? And that will never, as hard as we may try, we'll never get them into a console or a PC. And you're starting to see this trend already. Like Asus didn't make five versions of a gaming phone because they're just doing it for fun, right? There is a market for like high-end mobile gaming hardware, I think.
What I keep coming back to is like, a big core tenet of your argument, I feel like, has always been, console and PC are like the highest end, like that you graduate, I think you even literally use this language, like you start on mobile, you're never going to finish on mobile, you're going to eventually go to the better device.
That is my hope.
Why would you not just buy an Xbox?
Because I do think there's a segment of that mobile market that just doesn't care about console or PC.
Okay, so
I think that's unfortunate.
You've changed your mind on that, as long as you're willing to admit that.
Guys, I've been
hold on. I believe the progression should be mobile PC or mobile console PC. Like what I believe is right versus what I think is just happening is I think there's some segment of the mobile market that we will never look. I hope we can get the whole mobile market off of mobile. That's just not the reality. Some people are just going to stay there. And I think mobile, there is this segment at the top that's very hardcore. William, sorry, what were you going to say?
No, I've just been listening to this discussion. I mean, like, I just feels a little bit all over the place, guys. I mean, if I can kind of look, it seems to me like there's two beliefs you can have here. Does this have proprietary software for it? No, right? No, it doesn't, right? So you have to value this on the proposition of either, is there a hardcore gaming market that wants a premium play device, right? That's option one. Or option two is that this is a good bridge product for certain developing or emerging markets, right? Because of where it fits into the pricing curve and the use features. Those are the two use cases for this, right? I don't really know enough, without deep market research to have a strong opinion one way or the other. I will say the hardcore mobile gaming market for me feels like a reach just because, right? It feels like when you're really committed, you might rather spend $300 on the mobile game itself than on a better way to play it, right? Like if you're a super hardcore, I'm making this up, Farmville Candy Crush user, would you rather play Candy Crush with a controller, which it's not really designed for anyway? Or would you rather have $300 more to buy? Like it just feels to me that the devoted use case, people aren't devoted to a platform, they're devoted to the game. And so that market feels a tough sell for me. Lindsay's market feels much more believable to me, right? As sort of as a product. And I could definitely see that being an effective interim market product there. I have to trust her if that market is large or not. I just don't know. But like that to me is the use case where this makes sense.
I think you guys are ignoring the
$300. So William, I think you did an excellent job summarizing the points. And again, probably better. That was sort of the dichotomy that I was trying to say to them, that they were kind of arguing opposite ends of the spectrum. You did it a lot better than I did. But I just think $300 is going to be too expensive for the cheap, what Lindsay's going for. And I just think, to Paul's point, I don't think there's enough of a market for that high end.
You guys are ignoring the sign.
We'll see. Let's make a bet on it. This is what we do.
There's lots of big companies all making dedicated gaming phones. Even Microsoft this week, I will say, announced that they're optimizing Game Pass for their Surface Duo. This foldable Microsoft phone, so that you can have your controls on the bottom and your game on the top.
And that doesn't mean it's a gaming phone.
Hold on, but what they're trying to appeal to, and where the impetus of all this hardcore mobile gaming market's coming from, it's PUBG and Call of Duty Mobile. It's PUBG Mobile and Call of Duty Mobile, where you may not care to have controllers for Candy Crush, but if you're playing Call of Duty Mobile and you're playing it relatively seriously, you most definitely care. You care about better controls, higher frames per second, battery that doesn't drain, a CPU that doesn't throttle. Like, you care about those things at the high-end hardcore mobile market. And I don't know how big that market is, but that market, no question, exists. And I will tell you, many, many large hardware companies are going after it. Razer has made a controller attachment. Asus is making dedicated phones. We're going to see more dedicated. Razer made a dedicated phone, by the way, for this.
Fair.
Like, we're going to see a lot more of this, because I do think, given the success of PUBG Mobile and Call of Duty Mobile, many have bought in now that there is a hardcore mobile audience that we can sell hardware to.
That was going to be my point.
I think that's a better argument than not to rag on you, Lindsay. I think that's a better argument than that there's a lot of people that can't afford a $500 phone but can't afford a $300 device that's basically a phone that doesn't do phone. Which, maybe I'm paraphrasing your argument wrong. We can move on. But
Let me forget it. Move on. Adam says you can cut out the fluff, get larger 90 hertz or 120 hertz displays, and the same size phone batteries would mean playing for a long time. Yeah, you don't get the controllers and things like that. And they could probably still download a calling. Yes, I agree with that. Chris says, I bought a 3080 to play Stardew Valley. I can dig it. Chris, I
Go
love
for
you,
it, Chris.
but this is
You're
not the best
sixth
use
box.
of your 3080.
You're the sixth box on this podcast.
Chris says still sounds like the Nokia N-Gage troubling. The problem with the N-Gage was proprietary software, right? Here you can play all the Android games, including Call of Duty Mobile and all those things. So, and the N-Gage was not a bad piece of hardware. It was just ahead of its time and didn't have the games available that Android does today. Adam says
N-Gage.
Surface Duo.
I was surprised to hear you defend the N-Gage so much.
It was a good piece of hardware, though. It was way ahead of its time. It was the ROG phone before the ROG phone. Adam says Surface Duo, the Android Nintendo DS without a headphone jack. I actually think Microsoft's going to try and reposition it as a gaming device because it did not succeed as a productivity device. And I can tell you the Galaxy Fold is the better foldable between the two. But I guarantee you they're going to attempt to reposition it as a gaming device.
Have you guys seen their commercial? Because they do exactly that.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Gaming
their
on
new
it?
commercial is like a 13-year-old kid-ish, and he's comparing the MacBook Pro to the Surface Pro, and he has all these things about it. It's foldable, you can detach it, whatever. But the last thing is, and it's great for gaming. You know how important gaming is to me. And they basically say that Mac is bad at gaming.
Wasn't the Mac guy in that commercial, or is that a different one? You just called Justin Long a 13-year-old kid?
It is not. Justin Long is not in that commercial.
Because they did do a commercial with him where like he now like he's like now the PC guy. Like he's like I don't know. It's funny. I'm Lindsay. You know you're into like good Twitter accounts from. I like when like people use like old commercials from way back when where they like change the guy, like when Sprint or T-Mobile
Verizon
took
guy?
like the Sprint guy. Yeah, you know what I mean.
Wow, Jeff.
Good
Tell us
marketing.
what else you like.
I just these are things that I'm interested in, hobbies of mine.
Guys, before we sign off here, we have to do this. What are we playing this week? William, why don't we start with you? Let's go counterclockwise.
I didn't have a lot of time to play games this week, but I did play a couple random ones. I played Undertale because I'd actually never played it, and I wanted to see what it was about because like I kind of missed that, and I thought I shouldn't have missed it, so I played a little bit of Undertale, and I played Reus, which is like an older like planetary sim. I'm looking more for games that like maybe I could enjoy with my kids at some point, so I'm just kind of trying out different things. I had a weird gaming habit this week. Interesting.
What games are you thinking of trying out with your kids, William? I'm curious. What is the...
It's a whole separate thing. I don't know. I mean, I think like I'm really looking for a game that I think I'll have as much fun playing with them as I did with the Untitled Goose Game. Like that was really good to play with kids.
You played it? Didn't tell me?
What do you mean? I was the first one to talk about it.
No, you were not, because I announced that I was playing Untitled Goose Game, and both you and Paul were like, "What's that?"
Okay, well, I played it and really enjoyed it. So
yeah,
cool.
It's the best.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, if I had to have a recommendation right now for people, for games that they should like play with their kids, I mean, it's just so different by age group and everything. But I mean, generally, like Untitled Goose Game's top of my list. I gotta say, like, I think, let me see, what was the other one I did?
About like a Mario Kart, I would think would be pretty good.
Yeah,
no?
like
Or
the Mario games are very good. Like the problem is like they're actually a lot harder to control than you realize. Like Mario Odyssey, I think is a great kids game, but like the kids have to be pretty old. So I don't know. I'll think about it more.
Chris says Overcooked with the kids is a hit, bro, by the way. Just and Christian says no games this week, unfortunately, been interviewing for jobs, hiring. Christian, we can talk. You send me an email offline or add me on LinkedIn if you haven't already. Happy to chat. Lindsay, what are you playing this week?
I haven't been playing much, but I watched a lot of Hades. I hadn't actually watched it, even though it was the game of the year last year. So I've been like learning what Hades is about, and it's pretty fun.
Is so good.
Didn't it just win another award? Wasn't there some award ceremony or something? It was South by Southwest, I think, had awards for video games. And I'm not sure. I think it won. It may have. I'm not sure.
Deserves to win them all, Paul. It's freaking brilliant.
Is it that good? Hey,
it's the best.
I have
roguelite
only
ever.
heard that. Yeah, I have only heard that it's incredible. Also, William, there's a great speed run of Untitled Goose Game if you haven't watched it already.
Oh, really? No, I better watch that. That's
Mhm.
actually really good. Was it on
Yeah.
AGDQ or was it?
I mean, we just watched it
I'll
on
look it up.
YouTube, but
I'll
it's
look it
under
up.
3 minutes.
Oh, wow. That's fast. That's a speedy goose. Yeah,
Oh,
but
yeah.
Paul, if you haven't played Hades, you really need to. Hades is like it's a seminal game. It's not that it's such a huge leap forward, it's that it synthesizes everything that's come before it so well. Like it is the model that all
Mhm.
roguelikes will follow because
It doesn't feel like a Diablo clone because
it's nothing like Diablo. Nothing like
Okay.
it. Like just you can't even compare. It's totally different. It's weird because like sort of the idea is it's more of like an action game. It's more of like a Bastion or
Mhm.
something. But
it's the same developers, Bastion.
it's the same
right?
developers Bastion, yeah, Supergiant,
Yeah.
I think. But the idea is that you are, collecting these boons from different Greek gods. And it's really interesting how the game sort of opens up. Like when you first start playing it, you're just like, what do these things do? What's happening? And then you sort of go through this phase. Like I think a lot of roguelikes become very victim to like just chance. Like, oh, this is a great run. I got everything I needed. This is going to be easy. Or like, wow, the one thing I needed didn't drop. So this is, but you start to really realize you get a lot of tools in the game to manipulate what appears when and how it appears. And you start to actually really be able to craft the runs reliably, right? So you start to be able to understand what to look for and how it comes together. And so it gets to the point where like I was watching actually of Hades, funnily enough, I was watching the AGDQ 2021 speed run, and they beat the game 3 times in under an hour. Like it's like crazy in terms of like how they're able, because the systems are actually so player driven. It fixes my big problem with roguelikes, which is a lot of times the replayability is just bad luck. Whereas this is not that game,
Cool.
Also,
Jeff?
my internet went out earlier because Kev has been hitting up the gaming PC hard and will not stop playing Apex. So finally figured it out and booted him off.
Time for faster internet, Lindsay.
Whatever, I know.
Jeff?
You're the
You
best.
should
Lindsay.
send him down to like the local gas station or whatever. Isn't that what you do wherever you are?
7-Eleven.
One day.
Yeah, 7-Eleven, gas station, whatever.
Maybe
I
the post
retired
office will
from
get Lamb Center.
PC games. I retired after playing Apex.
That's right. You
or
went
no,
out
it
on
was
top.
It was Valorant. I kind of
Valorant.
went on top. And so now I'm only going to do mobile, but I will only do it on a specialized device. So I'm waiting for this Qualcomm one to drop. So more on that in the future.
Too soon.
Victoria?
Same old stuff. I played a lot of Cold War, a lot of Warzone, little Apex. I checked out the new Fortnite Season 6. Wanted to see what was up with that. It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's pretty much the exact same, except they renamed the weapons, a few new weapons. Also, you'll be walking along and like get attacked by a pack of wolves. So you have to like shoot them and then you can eat them. It's pretty barbaric. But
Fortnite running out of ideas.
Yeah, really. Now it's like a hunting game.
Or having too many.
Yeah. I guess
Adam's-
next has to be Untitled Goose.
Clearly.
It's the best.
In Hades. Adam says
Hades.
10 gig fiber in Utah. Adam, I am jealous. And I've got pretty fast here. Guys, that's it. That wraps up this week's episode of the live stream. I will say, make sure tune into the podcast tomorrow, because some of the stuff we really do cover in greater detail, like the Discord stuff and the GameStop stuff. I think it's a really good episode. So tune in, stay tuned for that tomorrow. As always, we're going to keep doing these every Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. This Friday also, every Friday, we've been doing a Clubhouse. We're calling it Business of Esports Future of Fun Fridays. It's more relaxed. It's more intimate even than the live stream. And usually the discussion's all over the place. So come in with questions, come in with stuff that you want to talk about, maybe not in the live stream setting. And make sure 2 things. One, go review William's book on Amazon, The Book of Esports, because I know all of you have bought it and I know all of you have not reviewed it. And follow us on Twitter, YouTube. All these channels have been growing for us and we really appreciate it. But if you're not following us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all those things, it's all Biz Esports or Business of Esports. Make sure to do that. And as always, we will see you guys. Actually, before I say that, thank you to all of you and thank you to everyone who participated, because this episode I thought was great and you guys were awesome. And we'll see you all next week.
Bye, everyone.